Hello everyone. My name's Wimpy, welcome to my world. Somebody tell me in chat, do I sound normal? And please be helpful. I know McPhail is probably going to troll me. For those of you that are joining, this is a second stab at this. Hopefully, audio problems out of the way. Excellent, thank you Yannick. Right then, so let's press on with this. Welcome back to another stream. This evening I'm going to dig into QEMU a little bit. Where should we start? First of all, you may have noticed if you've been here before, we've got a new set. My daughter helped me make that this afternoon. And based on some feedback in the comments and what have you, I've tried to create some profiles with some larger fonts for the browser and the terminal and the code editor. So hopefully that stuff will be a bit more visible. So constantly trying to improve this. I know it's a cliche, but if you can like and subscribe and follow, particularly subscribing to this channel, if we can crest 2,000 subs, it will unlock the community tab in YouTube, which is something I'd like to do to have some offline discussion with those of you that are interested in following along with what I'm doing here. That would be a good way to do that stuff. And if you prefer your videos powered by open source and blockchain, then I'm also on Library now. So you can find me there. In fact, here we go. And of course that isn't working, because why would it? Why would anything work this evening now? This doesn't bode well. The demo gods are frowning upon us. Right. Okay. Let's get into this. So QEMU. Why are we here? So I have been using VirtualBox for some years as the tool I use to, test out different distros and do ISO testing and stuff like that. But it got to the point where we were needing to run quite a number of distros. So Popey and I came up with a solution, which was to make these USB external drives. You'll find a video in this channel for how I made one from bits and pieces that you can get off Amazon and eBay for relatively inexpensive considering the capacity. This is my original one. This actually has my old VirtualBox configuration on it, which we're going to blow away and replace with my QEMU configuration. So QEMU is a fast hypervisor. And the problem that I had with VirtualBox is when it was on one of these, you have to create symlinks to the config, which is on this removable device. Occasionally, VirtualBox wouldn't sync on the device cleanly, and it would corrupt an image. So when you come back to use it another day, it no longer worked. And it was just a little bit clunky. And also, most of the machines I set up have exactly the same configuration except for the distro that's running inside them. So I wanted a means to quickly fire up ISOs and test them and keep them on external storage. And broadly speaking, use the same configuration for every virtual machine. So I wrote a bash script, but of course I did, to help me do that. So what we're going to do this evening is take a little look at that and take a little look at the QEMU script I've written. And having scripts kicking around just for personal use is not all that valuable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to release that as an open source project this evening. I expect that probably me and my aunt's cat will be interested in it. But, if any of you are interested in picking it up and running with it, then it'll be out there for anyone to have a play with. So, without further ado, let's get into this. So, let's plug in this USB drive to start with. So, if we just fire up a thing there, we'll plug this in over here and... have a look at how this looked like, I don't know, over a year ago when I was running VirtualBox. So that's shown up in the file manager. Here we go. So there's the main VirtualBox config file that you have to symlink back into the VirtualBox configuration. And then here there's a whole load of downloads for different distributions. You'll find there's quite a spread there. I mean, the last time I looked at this drive was a long while ago, a year and a half maybe. And then for my VirtualBox configurations, here are all of my VirtualBox machines. And as you can see, there's your the VDI, the VirtualBox configuration, any snapshots, and that's how I ran it. But like I said, it wasn't super reliable, and it was a bit clunky bending VirtualBox to those you know, configurations on a pluggable drive. So I'll just check in chat to see if anyone's got any questions around any of that. Now apparently the audio's fine now, so that's good. Someone's asking which is better between all of the tools. It's the one that suits you best. You know, you may look at what I'm about to show you and think it's crazy, and it may not suit you, but it's what works best for me. Yes, Yannick, it will come. There's no Ubuntu in the title of this one, but eventually the thumbs down will come. And JGJ says, I guess Wimpy is embracing the benefits of his favourite colour green. Am I? I'm not sure what you mean by that. No need to... Oh, sorry, I've read it out now. And... Right, and then Yannick asks about GNOME boxes, which is a nice UI to in front of the same tools and the same underlying infrastructure. And that's fine, but it has very prescribed places where it keeps the virtual machines, and I want flexibility to put it on a device. So what we'll do is we'll eject that. This is just going to be one of those evenings where nothing works. It is going to be one of those evenings where nothing works. So, here we have GNOME disks, and what we'll attempt to do here is stop that. There we go. And we'll use this to format this drive. Yeah, MBR is, well, actually, format that, and then we'll add a partition, and we'll call it QEMU, because this is what I'm going to call my script. We're not going to do a full erase. We'll use ext4. No need to encrypt it, because these are, and of course, GNOME disks is gonna cause problems. Ah, man, this is what happens when you try and do this stuff on a alpha. Let's see if that's got hold of it. I quite like GNOME disks when it works, and generally it does these days, except this evening. Right, okay. Let's go a different route then. We'll use gparted just because. So, oh crikey, how do we know which is which? This is the problem with gparted, we can't be sure, so let's just choose that one. Yeah, so it's this one that doesn't have anything on it. I can't type or anything. Right. Let's apply that then. So, Alexa, shut up. Honestly. Who's enjoying the live stream so far? It's been going really well, I think, this evening. What do you think? Do you think this is like, you know, 5-star live streaming? Why is this taking so long as well? There we go. Close. Right. And let's get rid of that. And we'll right then, so we've now got this drive here called QEMU, which we won't be able to put anything on because reasons. So let's go and sort that out. Oops, that's not what we want. So here's the drive that I've just created, and so now that should be owned by me. So now we should be able to go in here, and there it is. So new folder, yeah, we can do all of that. So what I'll do is I'm going to start by copying a couple of ISO images over that I've already got on the machine. So in fact, let's actually drag down this one here. And I'll just take a moment to look in the live stream and see if there's any questions. Turning it off and on again. I had to do that earlier after the Barry White incident. That was the only recourse I had available. Levski is asking me, what laptop or desktop do you use now? This is my desktop. Probably you can see from there. This is an i9 9900K in a Z390 motherboard with a 2080 Ti and stuff. So this is a machine I built last year. Right. So if we go back into the QEMU, we will create a folder, and I will then rsync a directory over the top of this, which is what I have on my I can see. I think what we'll do is we'll have a little switcheroo here. We'll put that there, we'll put this here so you can see what I'm doing. So traditionally, this little utility, this VM manager, has lived in my scripts directory, which is part of my .file configurations. So what we'll do is we'll pull all of that over. That shouldn't take too long, although Ubuntu Studio is on here, and that's quite large. But this is just rsyncing over my existing script, QEMU, and my configurations for a virtual machine. But I'm copying it over to the USB drive here, so I can demonstrate how that works on USB. The reason for putting it on a USB drive, of course, is that generally speaking, I'm using SSDs in my laptops these days, and when I go to sprints, I need to take these VMs with me, and I don't necessarily have enough capacity to bring over all of these VMs. At one point, I think I had over 1 terabyte of VMs on one of these drives. So what this enables me to do is have the VMs that I can use here on this desktop system, but then when I travel, I can just pull this drive and take it with me, and I've got all of my testing environment with me that I can take with me. So Sefer is asking why I don't use libvirt and virt manager. for similar reasons that just maintaining a configuration on different machines that points the virtual machines in different places is a bit of a faff. So this is just a really simple way just to keep all of the config and ISOs and virtual machines all in one place with no complicated configuration to manage. So that's really the reason why. Yes, and Yannick points out that, you know, it was discussed that I am just a person and I'm fallible just like everybody else, as we've seen several times already this evening. System divert D, really? Hello Hex DSL. Haven't seen you around for ages. Well, I've seen your streams, of course, but I haven't actually interacted with you for a long time, I don't think. Thanks for joining the stream. So we're just finishing the copying over. This took a bit longer than I anticipated, but there's a couple of things we'll go through here. So I've obviously got QEMU installed on my machine here, which is running Focal daily, and I also have something else installed, which is a snap called QEMU Virgil, and I'm going to be demonstrating that because it has some interesting properties that some of you, and HexDSL will be one of them, might find interesting. And my little script has some rudimentary features to switch between either QEMU or this snap of QEMU Virgil. Come on, go faster bits. You must nearly be finished by now. There, oh, very nearly, very nearly. One more file to go. Yes, it has been a little bit of yelling at electronic devices this evening, but hopefully we're beyond the worst of it now, he says, anxiously looking around for a bit of wood to touch. Maybe this is my opportunity to open another beer. Right. Authentic beer opening sounds there. So once I'm going to just walk through the QEMU script and point out what it does. It's got some fairly basic setup for QEMU, and I'll point out a couple of the things that it does, because something that I was really interested in was having the ability to boot legacy BIOS and also EFI. Cheers, Isnig. Today's beer, one of my favourites, is Old Speckled Hen. Obviously now with the country on lockdown, I had to go out and I bought a load of beer and wine, and as I was going through the checkout, somebody was one of the assistants was pointing out that I was doing it right, that, you know, I hadn't gone in there and taken all the toilet roll, I'd gone in there for all the beer and wine. So clearly we were going to be all right. A coconut milk stout. Wow, I've never heard of such a thing. That sounds pretty amazing. So that's what Paul M is drinking. Right, okay, come on, last image. I should have maybe not done all of these things, but once we've got these, it'll go a bit faster. Forget the TP. What's TP? LQ Larry is saying forget the TP. Not sure what that is. Hello. Hello. Right. George likes my system configuration. Yeah, it was, when I built it, it was more or less a no compromise build. I had a 1080 Ti at the time, and subsequently I've added a 2080 Ti. Oh, good lord. This is taking way too long. Right, okay, let's start. So I have this directory as the rsync finishes atop. I have QEMU, which is my little script. I have these conf files, which are the virtual machine configurations, and then in each of the subdirectories I have an ISO image, and it's also where I keep the QCOW disk image for the ISO, for the operating system. So if we just take a look at, let's bring down code. By the way, look at this splendid Visual Studio Code theme. So I found today an Ubuntu, a very nice Ubuntu Visual Studio Code theme. So if we take a look at this configuration for my Ubuntu Mate VM, this is it. These are the only things you need to configure. You need to give it the path to the ISO image, and then you need to give it the path to a disk image, and the script derives everything else for you. So it's super simple configuration. James King is asking, couldn't I have just used Vagrant, set an env, and a quick XML file edit? Seems easier. Is it easier than these two lines that you're looking at right now? My experience with Vagrant is it's quite flaky, so I've not had good luck with Vagrant, and this has been super reliable for a year and a half or so for me now. So that's the configuration. That file copy is still going. So let's take a little look at the script itself. So it's a bash script. I've just got some notes at the top here. How to install QEMU. So these are the bits that you need. And this OVMF is the so Isnig we'll get to is asking about how is the mouse moving in and out between the VM. We'll take a look at that in a little bit. I'll show you. So I've got QEMU installed, and here's some scripts. So I just derive a launcher name. This is kind of irrelevant, it's not super important. This piece here that I'm just highlighting, and also let me know if these font sizes are good enough for you to good point McPhail. Yes, we can do that. I even put my flipping script in a I thought I put it in here earlier. So McPhail has noticed that there's some glitching on the stream, and I know precisely why this is, and because I've just rebooted. It hasn't been put in place, so we will just fix that now. Good, right? That should be sorted. Right, let's just close that down. Right, so where were we? Right, we were looking at this. So let me know if you can see the fonts okay. Thanks, McPhail, for pointing that out to me. And Yannick as well, thank you. Font size is good, people say. Great. Okay, so this here is a simple bit of enumeration to look at the number of cores in the system, and then determine how many cores to allocate to a virtual machine. So it's self-explanatory. If you've got more than 8 cores, it gives a VM 4 cores. If you've got more than 4 cores, it gives a VM 2 cores. Otherwise, you get 1 core. And then we do a similar trick with the amount of memory in the system. So we interrogate how much RAM is in the system, and if you've got more than 64 gig, then it gives 4 gig per VM. If you've got more than 16 gig, you get 3 gig per VM, and then finally 2 gig as default. I've currently got the disk set as 64 gig as just a flat default. This is a QCOW image, so they don't tend to grow that size, but anything less than that, and it limits the amount of testing that I can do, so I tend to keep it about there so I can do the full gamut of testing. This is a little hangover for handling QEMU on 1804, which I can probably yank out at some point. And then I have a series of functions. I'll come back to those in a moment. But here we go. So we have basic usage. So we can launch a configuration, and then we have some optional things: delete, restore, snapshot, and Virgil. This is just some environment variable instantiation. This BIOS line, by default, will configure the virtual machines to boot using EFI rather than legacy BIOS, and that's a feature I want to tinker with this evening. By default, it uses the QEMU version from installed as Debs rather than Virgil, and then by default it will try and enable the Samba capability so that it'll automatically mount your home directory accessible from within inside the VM. So these are the defaults, and this here is how you do arguments in a bash script. So you basically iterate over the number of arguments that were passed to the script, and whilst those arguments are not to 0, you evaluate each of them and then you action them. So you can see here I have the delete feature, the snapshot, the turning on Virgil, picking up the config for the VM, picking up the help, and once you're done you come out the other side of it, and then we do some additional validation. So we work out from the disk image, we derive a snapshot image name in case we want to make a snapshot, and then if we ask to delete an image, it will delete the disk image associated with that VM. Restore is to restore a snapshot that we've previously made, and snapshot is to create a snapshot. And then finally, if we haven't done any of these, then we boot the VM. So if we look at that piece here, so it says if there is no disk image, then create a QCOW disk image file. So that just provisions an image that we can use. And then this is a dirty little trick that I've done. I only really care about the ISO image if I'm booting and there was no disk image. So the way this works is you tell it where the ISO image is, and if there was no disk image, that first boot, it will boot off the ISO and you've got a blank image that you can install in. Subsequent boots where you have a disk image, it just throws the ISO configuration away and just boots off the disk image. And this is just a real convenience thing, so it's very simple just to spark up the VM that you want, and you don't have to deal with unmounting media and all of that stuff. And then in terms of actually starting the VM, this is the entire sum of it. So it starts QEMU, and this variable engine is either x86-64 from regular QEMU that's installed via Debs, or if I've passed the flag for Virgil, it'll be QEMU Virgil, and we'll come back to why QEMU Virgil is super cool in a little moment. It passes the CD-ROM to the ISO, and the ISO is either a full path to an ISO image on first boot or it's blank. Then we passed it the drive, so we tell it where the file for the drive image is, and then we use virt.io and some other flags to accelerate the disk throughput as best as we can. So Yannick is asking, out of curiosity, would this run a Windows VM? The answer to that question is yes, it would. So if you have an ISO image for Windows, that would work. However, stick around. I have interesting news about how you can do some cool stuff for running not just Windows, but another operating system as well. We then enable KVM, which is a means of accelerating the performance. It uses the KVM kernel module. We provide a machine type, Q35. This is an internal code that defines a specification of a machine, and it's a relatively modern machine configuration. And again, I haven't worked out if this is absolutely necessary, but it doesn't error, and it seems to be required on older versions of QEMU, so I've left it around. And then the CPU, we pass through the host CPU, and again we ensure that KVM is on. This is where we set up the amount of RAM, which was introspected. This is where we set up the number of CPU cores, which was introspected. We assign a network interface using VirtIO, because that's more performant than emulating like a Realtek card or an Intel card. This net user line, this is what enables the Samba pass-through to the home directory. And the reason that this is a variable here is so this can be turned on and off, and I'll get to that in a bit. We pass through the real-time clock from the host. This is another performance optimization. We emulate Intel HDA sound. We set up the keyboard as a USB keyboard and a USB tablet. Now, that USB tablet line could be replaced with USB mouse. The reason we use tablet was for the reason that Isnig pointed out earlier. This actually gives you some nice seamless interaction between the host and the window. This is a little optimization to expose dev urandom from the host inside the VM, so performance improvement. This is part of the same setup. This gives us high performance USB emulation, and then this last piece here is setting up all of the video. And I'm passing a flag here which may or may not be supported, depending on the way that QEMU was built. And then finally we choose what display output, which we have defined at the top of the script, which is introspected, and then the BIOS mode. So currently the default BIOS mode is further down here, in fact, is here, which is basically using EFI booting, and the display is going to be this on modern systems. So it's going to use GTK as the toolkit, and then it will turn on grab on hover and turn off zoom to fit. So that's basically what happens. So this is a consistent configuration. Every time I fire up a VM, that's what I get. So if we want to see it in action very quickly, we will so Ubuntu Mate doesn't have a disk image at the moment, so and that ISO is from some days ago, so we'll start by z-syncing a current Mate desktop over the top. So if you're not familiar, Z-Sync is a way to pull down the daily images and just do a binary delta update over an image that you've already downloaded. So if you're testing the daily CD images, which is something that at this point in the cycle I'm doing quite regularly, and Bill, who's in the chat, who's part of the Ubuntu Mate QA team, this is something we'll be doing on a fairly frequent basis. So this is way quicker than having to pull down a whole 2.5 gig image each day, it will just pull down the differences. So it's currently doing the differential analysis by looking at the seed that's been published on the release on the CD image site versus what we had here. Hello Joe, thanks for joining. Thank you all for joining actually. I was a bit concerned when it all went horribly wrong earlier, so thank you all for sticking with me and turning up to this. And whilst this is just syncing up, let's do this. So we've got an Ubuntu image here, an Ubuntu VM, and I have a disk in this one. Just here, there's a disk image there. So the way we could use this is we can do VM Ubuntu focal, which is my config file, and we'll do a delete. In fact, no, let's do a snapshot. So I want to make a snapshot. Oh, I have a bug in my program. Oh, we know this from the other evening. We know I have a bug in my program. So that will need fixing later. Maybe we'll get into that and we'll actually fix that problem. But I actually want to delete that image. So if I do a delete, there we go. It gets rid of the snapshot and the QCOW image. So I've now got a blank image. And here we go. The Z-Sync is now running above there. And it's going to take a minute or so to just pull in the differences, which is sort of a looked like about a 20% differential. Hello Justin Zobel, haven't seen you around for a while either. It's nice to see some familiar, I was going to say faces, but I suppose it's names, but yeah, hello, welcome to the stream. So that's taking a bit too long. Let's I do want to pull this one down because I haven't actually tested it, so I thought I'd get some value out of this by actually, you know, testing this thing for real. Now, what I'm going to do is when I test this for the first time, I'm actually going to how are we going to do this? I want to use QEMU Virgil because I want to show you why that's cool. The reason it's cool, it's going, so Alan Pope has just joined the chat. Hello Alan. Alan Pope is asking, is this launchery thing on GitHub? It is not, but by the end of this live stream it will be. That is one of the things I'm going to be doing, is putting this up so that people can come and have a play. Right, so there's Ubuntu Mate. We're all done and dusted. So we will now launch. So we'll do a quick MU. As you remember, I showed you this config earlier. So here it is. I have a config for Ubuntu Mate Focal. It tells us where the ISO path, where the disk image will be, even though it doesn't exist yet. We say run a VM image for Ubuntu Mate, the focal one, and if I whack that, the first thing it does here is this is it creating the blank image, and there it is. There's the image booting, and this is a new feature in 2004. Does if you saw that very quickly, it does a full integrity check of the image, and this is because we were getting increasing number of reports on Ask Ubuntu, people not successfully installing, and it turned out that their downloads were corrupt a lot of the time. So we've put that in as a default now to try and catch that. So Yannick says he's already installed QEMU Virgil. We'll do a cool little test with that. So the first thing I'm going to do is, this is a difference we'll be able to demonstrate with Ubuntu later, but if I just go to the displays, let's, oh, yeah, we don't need to use that. Let's do that. There we go. So here's our VM. And we can do an install. That chime is expected. That's a prompt for visually impaired users. So as you can see, I'm running my VM here. We'll just do a quick install. We'll do the very basics. So at this point, this is, you know, performing just as you'd expect. Now, somebody was asking about what's the mouse interaction like. So as you can see, I'm able to traverse in and out of the VM window without any special combinations. It just seamlessly moves in and out. And it's reasonably reasonably performant because of the options that we've used, although we need to bear in mind that I'm streaming at the same time at the moment. So Alan Pope tells us that this is the chime is from the Ubuntu phone. And right, so Isno was saying you can't just stretch it. So it depends on your distro. So in Ubuntu Mate, if I just stretch this window, it will stretch, but it doesn't actually resize. But GNOME does. So I will show that in a bit. Of course that exists on my network. Kel surprise. Right, okay. So whilst that one's running, what we'll do is we'll just minimize that. We'll create a new window here. And we'll do the same, but at the same time, remember this is running off a USB drive. We'll run up one for Focal as well. Because why not? And in fact, what we'll do is we'll close that. Oh no, we will run this one. So remember I said that by default this will use EFI booting in the VM. So you will see here, here's the boot screen, and to drive home the fact this is EFI, you will see momentarily, he hopes. What have I done? Oh, I know what I've done. Confused the boot order. Right, let's try that. So we'll try Ubuntu, and what we should see here is here you can see the EFI boot splash. So this is flicker-free boot being tested inside a VM, and this was one of the reasons why I wanted this ability to boot from EFI or legacy BIOS. But the problem is my script doesn't have the mechanism of switching between those two modes, which is a feature I would like to add. And then Isno, I see you've changed your name. Isno was asking about resizing, so now if we grab the corner of GNOME and do a resize and let go, GNOME actually resizes to the window snapping. So this works really seamlessly. So you can move, you know, in and out of the VM without any complications, and yeah, it all works very nicely indeed. So I'm going to close this now. I've demonstrated that feature. I'm going to now run the Ubuntu one I'm going to kill the disk because I'm about to run it with a different option. So I'm now going to run it with Virgil. And this will use the snap. Oh, what have I done here? I bet this doesn't have what I need. This is where I find out that I've got a feature. Yeah, okay. So what I've just discovered is I've been using this from within my home directory, and this doesn't have the removable media interface, which is what I would need. So for the purposes of testing, I'll come back to that in a moment. How's our Mate install coming along? Nearly done by the looks of it. So what I want to do is get this project into GitHub. So let's go and do that. And I will update the description in the show notes later. Right then, we will pick a license. I always choose MIT for my personal bits and pieces, and we'll have a README. So let's do that. And we will clone this. Where did I have this item media? So I'm just copying my script over. What the heck? Oh. So there's that, and if we push that and refresh this project, there we go. We now have one MIT licensed project in GitHub, which I will just paste in chat for continuity. So let's have a look. I'm just going to catch up in the things. Hello, Craig. Thank you for joining the chat. So Popey also has... Have you just forked QEMU Virgil, Popey? Done a pull request. Oh, right. So Alan Pope has just added a pull request to add the removable media interface to the snap of QEMU Virgil. And the reason why I want that is because I've actually been running this all from my home directory in testing. And that's fine, but now I want to use it on a USB drive. I need that removable media interface in order for the snap to be able to access those things. And Alan has also said that he's filed a PR for our friend Ogra, who works at Canonical and is the maintainer of the QEMU Virgil Snap. But I did want to demonstrate why QEMU Virgil is kind of cool. So let's do that here. Let's do it where I originally had it in place. How can I do this? Let's just think. Right. So QEMU Virgil is nifty because it, let's see if this will work. Booting from hard disk. We can hope. I don't know if it's going to work. No, that disk is not going to work. Boot, is it? So let's do a delete and run that up. So this is now running up the ISO of Ubuntu, but I'm doing it from my home directory to avoid this issue with the interface. And I'm using QEMU Virgil, and I'll show you why. So what QEMU Virgil does is Virgil is a means of passing through some of the 3D acceleration from the virtual machine to your host operating system. So let's try. I wonder if this will work. I wonder if I can do all of this inside a inside the running system. Let's push at the edges of this. Oh no, something has gone wrong. Oh, that's disappointing. Right. Oh, that's really disappointing. Okay, let's see if that stays up. So let's try snap install and so we'll install a game called Bomb Squad. This uses 3D and all of that good stuff. And what we're going to do is we're going to try and run this game and maybe run it at full. I wonder if I can access decent resolutions. Now I can. So let's try something conventional. Apply that. Keep changes. Good. So that game is installed. Remember, this is installed inside a VM. And everything's connected. So if we do snap run, this is to prove it's running from the snap. Oh, helps you spell it right, I suppose. So here, hopefully, will be the game. There we go. I wonder if I can turn the audio down a little bit. Okay, so that's working. And then under advanced, oh no, not advanced, under graphics, we'll turn on a frame counter. This is not doing what I expected it to do, I'll be honest. Oh, because I'm doing stuff. But this is passing off the video to the GPU in my system. And if you haven't seen this game before, you're probably intrigued now because it's rather good fun. Right, I'm not going to get into playing it, but anyway, what you can see here is a 3D game working with the GPU pass-through stuff going. And that was really why Virgil's interesting. Right. Gosh, it's loud. So, that was a bit of fun. Like running in a live session in a VM. We don't even need to do that. So now we have this up there. What I was struggling with there is that I actually wanted to be able to control when I was booting from EFI and when I was booting from legacy BIOS. So that is what I would like to add to this script this evening very quickly, is add a new flag to switch the BIOS mode. So here's the script we were looking at earlier. It's 177 lines. It's quite sparsely set out. As a few people have asked about Windows before, let's just get into that very quickly now. So I've got another VM running somewhere. I've got my Mate VM. Let's restart that one. Get that shut down after it's finished. So what was quite nice there is that I changed the artwork in Ubuntu Mate a couple of days ago, and that's the first time I've booted a VM of it since, and I could see that that was actually working correctly. So yeah, Bomb Squad is a terrific fun game, really good fun party game. So this is now booting my installed VM of Ubuntu Mate. And, you know, you need to remember that this is doing this off an external USB drive as well. So we had both those VMs both running off USB storage. So I'm not going to log into this. I'm just going to let that shut down. Because what I very quickly want to point out is that, good evening, Youssef. Thank you for joining the stream. Is that as some of you have mentioned Windows, you could download an ISO image and probably use this script quite successfully, but there's no need for that. So let's go to the Snap Store. There is a snap in the store published by Daniel Llewellyn, who is a community contributor superhero, and what you can see here is Clouds Windows 10 VM, and this will, if you snap install Clouds, it will download and boot a Windows 10 system inside a snap using much the same technology that I've just explained here this evening with QEMU. So if you want a Windows VM and you don't want to go through all of the aggravation of configuring it, Snapcraft.io Clouds. And if you want to go one step further, there is another snap called Sosumi, which is macOS 10 inside QEMU inside a snap. So if you have a need to test something on macOS, then there is a snap for that as well. And as you may have noticed, this one has been put together by Alan Pope. So if you want to, you know, test other operating systems, then those two snaps might be of interest to you. Right then, I want to change how this works so that I can flip between BIOS modes. So the first thing I need to do is modify my script here to understand BIOS. So we'll have BIOS as the flag. And then we will we'll need another shift here because this is going to pass the first argument, and we'll then say BIOS equals actually no, we won't do this. We'll do it like this. We'll do it EFI, and we'll say BIOS equals this, and then we can just do one shift to get rid of the leftover parameters, and then we can have another option. We'll just copy this code, and we'll call this one legacy. And that flag will just be get rid of the strings for that, so it'll boot without the EFI firmware. So that should do it, I think. So if I save that, if I now boot my, let's boot something like Ubuntu Mate, no, let's do Ubuntu. So if we do Ubuntu, and we'll delete the image, and now we should be able to boot this with BIOS, no, legacy. And this should boot with a traditional old school BIOS rather than EFI, and that hasn't happened. Why hasn't that happened? Legacy. Why did that not do the right thing? Okay. Let's just catch this here. And we'll exit. Well, that flag is definitely not set. That is a good point. Am I editing the right file? I believe I am. Oh. Let's just comment that out and make sure that's not being passed through somehow. So, legacy. Well, that's definitely... Oh, actually, no, that may have been doing the right thing. That was doing the right thing. Just so that is doing the right thing. So if we get rid of that and delete. So let's do legacy, and we can test that this is working properly. Yeah, this is right. This is doing the right thing. It was doing the right thing before. I was just surprised that the flicker-free boot was working in BIOS mode. I've not actually seen that before. But this boot menu that I'm going through now is only presented in a traditional BIOS. But I am surprised that the flicker-free boot animation, the new boot animation, is being displayed on a traditional BIOS system. Bash is programming. Yeah, Bash is programming. Bash is awesome. I really like Bash. So if I'm not going to do a full install, but if I start this and say continue, what we should see is when we get asked what we want to do and say erase the disk install now, yeah, okay, right, I think that's actually added the feature that I needed. So if I now just delete that and do an EFI boot, we'll know it's EFI because we won't get the pretty boot screen. We'll get this one. So we now know we're in EFI mode. And there it is. So that was a pretty easy feature to add, as it happens. I don't need to boot it to test that any further. This is also mimicking like an OEM logo that you get on some laptops. So that's that done. So now let's look at this. If we go into here, open a folder. I need to go to where my development is because this isn't where it is anymore. So let's copy that script in here. So I'm now copying this script in from where I'd been running it into where I have my Git repository. So if I copy that over the top and then open that particular folder, so we've opened this as a Git project in VS Code, and if I make this full screen, what we can now do is click here into the Git view, and when I click that, we can now see the changes that I made. I need to keep that. So we can see I added this EFI piece here and the legacy piece here, and those are the only changes. So what we'll do is I could just add the whole file, but let's do it this way. So I've just staged those few lines, and then we'll say that just to demonstrate that we can why not? There we go. Oh, what? The following file has unsaved changes. Save and commit. So, did that commit both? Oh, it blooming did. Oh well. So, let's push those. Where's that? Have I not got this authenticated? There we go. So push those changes up, and then hopefully now when we look in here we can refresh and see there are 3 commits. And there's my code changes. So a very quick demo there of how I run, well I say quick, there's a demo of how I run QEMU. What do people think about that? Is that anything useful in that at all, or is this just crazy stuff that I would do because of the weird way I have things set up? Michael, thank you for asking people to subscribe. Yes, if I can get to 2,000 subs, it unlocks new features in YouTube. Right then, fetched and merged. Okay, so that's where I'm gonna continue to tinker on QuickEMU now. So as I develop new features, it will be there. Maybe I should wrap this in a snap alongside an instance of QEMU, so that it's a super simple, you know, like way to launch VMs for trying out desktop. This looks like this was actually useful. Return codes. Isno, what do you want to know about return codes? I don't think I'm evaluating any of them in here because it is intended to be a pretty lightweight, as in, you know, not feature rich. It should catch errors, but it doesn't pass them back up. So there it is. I suppose one other thing I could quickly show you is this is Visual Studio Code, and here are the extensions that I have enabled in Visual Studio Code, and some of my favorites are this one, bracket pair colorizer. If you ever get into code with lots of brackets, you really want this in your life. Each pair is uniquely colored. That's extremely useful. If you do Debian packaging, this one is terrific for syntax highlighting deb packages. If you work with GitHub, there's a whole plugin extension from GitHub that manages the whole GitHub workflow. This is very topical. Live share. This enables you to do pair programming remotely, so you can have 2 people with the editor open, and you can say either share what I'm doing or collaboratively work together on stuff. This is an amazing markdown tool. All the markdown things. Material icon theme, it's just pretty. And then my new most favorite one is this, the Ubuntu theme for VS Code, and this is a relatively new one, and it's fab, and it's the one I'm running right now. And then if you use Pastebin on Ubuntu, there's a Pastebin extension as well. So there's some of my favorite Visual Studio Code plugins that make life a little bit easier. So we're done with VS Code, we're done with QEMU. That was as much as I was going to touch on this evening. If anyone has questions from any of this, then feel free to put them in the comments and I'll get to them. I don't see there's the need for a follow-on on this unless anything radical happens. The next couple of streams I'm going to be doing are very much going to be around updating, bug fixing, patching packages that will be uploaded to Ubuntu Mate, because we're now entering that, you know, QA period. So so everything I'll be doing in the near future will be Debian packaging, adding patches to Debian packages, revving Debian packages to newer versions of upstream projects, how I test that using PPAs, so how to upload to a PPA, and then also submitting that to the Ubuntu archive and also to the Debian project. So, you know, when I update packages, it's actually a bunch of work because it needs to go in different directions. So I think that covers everything I wanted to do. Thank you everyone for coming. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this, found it insightful, useful or interesting, give it a thumbs up. Ding the bell. You have to select all. They've made why that bill exists is beyond me, and why it's so complicated now is even more confusing. But at the very least, please subscribe and follow me, mwimpress on Twitter, so you get notifications of streams in the future, of which there will be several a week, I imagine, because I'm usually doing something, and I'm going to try and stream as much of the stuff that I do from this point forward. So, thank you everyone. I really appreciate you all turning up. I hope you found that interesting or useful. And without further ado, I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye.